I received a message from my dad early morning, October 7th, and he shared with me that war had just started. 5 minutes after, I'm trying to call my dad again, and this time there is no answer. Only 4 in the afternoon, about one of the neighbors suddenly picked the phone. He told us that our parents' house is burned to ashes with 2 bodies inside. My young brother told us we must make a family decision that we are rejecting revenge.
As for Israel and Palestine, there's lots of despair. The message we bring is we know the pain. We talk about the pain. We talk about how horrible things are. We talk about the structural imbalance, the asymmetry, but we also talk about hope.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast where we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. My guests today are 2 men whose lives have been shaped by loss and are now driven by the idea that peace is not only imaginable, but urgently necessary. Their story begins on opposite sides of a conflict that has taken so much from both of them. Yet, in the aftermath of October 7th, what emerged between them was not hatred, but a partnership. Aziz Abu Sarah and Maoz Inon are peace activists and co-authors of The Future is Peace, a book that traces their personal histories and the history of their shared landscape. Maoz, an Israeli whose parents were killed in the October 7th attacks, and Aziz, a Palestinian whose brother was killed by the IDF when he was a child, have built a friendship and a joint mission to rethink what reconciliation can look like in a place where violence often feels inevitable. Thank you both for joining us. Now, we normally begin this podcast, which is normally just one person, with a, if you could change the world in any way, how would you change it? I mean, do you have a shared vision of how you would change the world if you could just wave a magic wand?
Yeah, it's right in front of you.
Peace.
It's peace. It's absolutely peace. That the future should be peace, and that's where what all of us should do and work for.
I mean, the future is peace is a bold statement and prediction. Mm-hmm. What makes you so sure?
So first, we want to live and model the change we so much desire and dream upon. And our relationship, friendship, brotherhood, this is the model of the future. This is the model how peace is a choice that we individual, but then nation and people can take in order to heal, in order to grow, in order to cure and fix what is so broken now in the reality we are living within. And the future is peace, and we are proving through 8 days of a shared journey across the Holy Land, we are proving that all conflicts end in the end. All conflicts, doesn't matter where and when, they end in diplomacy, in negotiation, in terms that we were able to achieve before the recent bloodshed and cycle of violence. And we are proving that so will be with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we are doing it through sharing many, many stories from the Greek mythology, from the biblical time, from ancient histories to our personal life and the stories of the many people, Palestinian Israelis, we meet along the way. And everyone who reads the book will receive an injection of agency, of hope that we all and each one of us can change the world.
Aziz, when you say, all conflicts end, in peace, why are you so sure about that? I mean, don't many conflicts actually go up and down over time, but actually some are never ending?
Eventually they do end. We might not be at that point where they did end, but conflicts do end. I've traveled and I've worked in many conflict zones around the world. I've worked in Northern Ireland, for example, where people say to me, this conflict has been going on for hundreds of years. And yet it did end with the Good Friday Agreement. It doesn't mean things are perfect. It doesn't mean it's a utopia. Things are significantly better. When you look at the list of people who were killed before the Good Friday Agreement, to the list of people who haven't been killed after the Good Friday Agreement, to looking today at Northern Ireland, the First Minister is a Catholic woman. Nobody could have even imagined such a thing before, where you have much more equality. And again, it's something you keep working on. We'll never reach a perfect peace, but we always strive toward that perfect peace. So Northern Ireland's an example. Colombia is an example. South Africa is an example. We can go on. Rwanda is an example. We can go on and so many examples around the world. And the best way to end conflicts is through diplomacy, because when we don't end it through diplomacy, we just have so much suffering, like what happened to the two of us. You lose family members, you lose friends, and we destroy so much resources that we should use instead of killing each other. We put the most brilliant minds in the world to work at inventing weapons instead of inventing ways to make our lives better for humanity. And that's such a shame that we do that.
I guess we should start with how you met and how you reached out, Aziz, to Maoz, and why. I mean, you were both sort of in the peace business before.
Yeah. Well, our joke is that we met on a dating app called JDate. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but that's not how we met. No, we met because I sent Maoz a message after his parents were killed, and I sent him my condolences and saying, I'm sorry for your family, and I stand with you. And I think often people would assume if you're Palestinian, you don't have empathy for Israelis. If you're Israeli, you don't have empathy for Palestinians. And our story shows that this is not true.
So where were you when October the 7th happened? What were you doing? And how did you know Maoz vaguely, or how did you have his number?
Right. I didn't have his number. So we've met 10 years earlier because the two of us work in travel. I co-founded Majdi Tours, which is a travel company that does peace building through travel to 40 countries in the world. And Maoz co-founded Abraham Hostels and the Fawzi Azhar Inn and the Jesus Trail. And so our companies work together. We met once in 2014 for a few minutes, and that was it. And then we became friends on Facebook. So I didn't have his number to even send him that message. I sent it on Messenger on Facebook. And I just felt it was important to send that message. I was in the States at the time, had just left Jerusalem a few days earlier, and woke up to a message from one of my colleagues in Jerusalem, a Jewish colleague, telling me war has broken out. I didn't know I thought she was exaggerating. I didn't know what she was talking about. And as I checked, I realized hell has broken over and loose and things looking really, really terrible. And somebody sent me a message a day later or 2 days later and told me Maoz's parents were killed because he worked with us in tourism. And I decided it was important to send that message. I wasn't sure if I should send it that day or maybe wait a couple of days. But I felt it's important to send it because in these dark moments, it's really important to show empathy from every side. It doesn't matter if you're Palestinian or Israeli. We should be able to call spade spade. And when something wrong is done, even if it's done by us, by people who share my same national identity, we should be able to say it's wrong, whether it's October 7th or the destruction happening in Gaza. We should be able to call it what it is.
Can you tell me your side of that?
Yeah, it's the other side of the wall and of the mirror. But what I realized only yesterday, that this brotherhood was meant to happen, because we lived in parallel life for so many years as travel entrepreneurs in Palestine, in Israel, across borders. And Aziz was a legendary peacemaker and a tourism entrepreneur for me for many years, but we were friends only in Facebook. And I was doing the same work between Jews and Arabs within Israel. And we lost contact, and I was born and raised in a kibbutz, small community, maybe a kilometer and a half away from Gaza, and then we moved even closer to Netiv Asara, the nearest community to the Gaza border. And for the last 20 years, I've been living and raising my family in a small town that's called Binyamina, halfway between Tel Aviv and Haifa. And I received a message from my dad early morning, October 7th, and he shared with me that war had just started. So I called him, and he told me we can hear the shooting, the shouting, the bombs around us. So we locked the house, and we are in the safe room. So I could hear my mom in the background. I told Dad, I'll call you later. I'm just dressing up and making coffee. So let's be safe and let's talk soon. 5 minutes after, I'm trying to call my dad again, and this time there is no answer. I'm calling my mother, no answer. I'm waking up my 3 sisters. My young brother was based in London, and we try to reach them, but no one picks the phone. And only 4 in the afternoon, about one of the neighbors suddenly picked the phone, and we tell him, just tell us what's going on. We don't need you to come here. We don't need you to soften the news for us. Just tell us what's going on. And he told us. He told us that our parents' house is burned to ashes with 2 bodies inside. 2 days after, we were sitting, the 5 siblings, and my young brother told us we must make a family decision and to share it across the world that we are rejecting revenge. That we don't want to avenge the deaths of our parents, because by avenging the death, we are not going to bring them back to life. We're only going to escalate the cycle of bloodshed that we both, Palestinian and Israelis, been trapped within for a century. And he was telling us to cherish the memory of and legacy of our parents. We must create a new path, the path to peace and reconciliation. And a day after, I received a message from Aziz, and I answered with a broken heart. And now in the last 2.5 years, co-authoring The Future is Peace, starting our own charity, Interact International, with the mission to bring peace by 2030, we forged this brotherhood. But the critical moment was Aziz's first message, and it was literally like a hand reaching out, saving me from drowning in the ocean of sorrow and pain. It's not a metaphor. It was literally, I could not breathe. My body was broken into thousands of pieces. But Aziz's hand, and from that moment on, helped me to heal, helped me to survive.
I mean, how did you resist, despite all your personal history and family history, how did you resist feeling hatred? Wishing for revenge?
So I did wish for revenge, and I was hateful, but it was against my own government, because I was holding my government, the Israeli government, who promised us so many times directly to my parents and on public that they are secure and safe. That the wall that was literally shadowing my parents' house, it's again not a metaphor, it was literally shadowing most invested barrier humanity ever built. And they promised us security and safety. They promised us that Hamas is a strategic asset to the state of Israel, because through supporting and strengthening Hamas, they are weakening the Palestinian authorities. And in May 21, they promised us that all Hamas tunnels in Gaza were demolished by the IDF. So, and Hamas on October 7th was acting based on his nature, based on his written charter, to kill as many Israelis and Jews as possible. And it was the Israeli government that was supposed to protect and safeguard my parents. And I was bitterness and hateful and wanted to seek revenge and punish the Israeli government. And one day I shared with my kids, wife, and 2 friends how I'm going to do that. I had a plan, how I'm going to take them down. And then my friends and family told me, Maoz, maybe it will work and you will take the government down, but you will go down with them. And we need you, because you are the first one and the only one that can create hope in this dark time. This is where you should resource yourself. And it was very difficult to me to let this hate go.
I mean, when you say you had a plan to bring them down, what do you mean? Do you mean a violent plan? Or?
I thought that back then, because everything was so fragile, and the discourse was so broken, I don't think violence was necessarily, but I learned from Aziz. I learned from Aziz that I have an agency, that I can choose forgiveness. And I can choose forgiveness not because the Israeli government asked for it, or they don't care and they don't listen to me. I can choose forgiveness to save myself from the destiny they choose for me. I can choose forgiveness that will allow me not to let hate and revenge consume me from the inside. I stop functioning as a father. I start functioning as a husband. I stopped functioning as a friend. I was only focused how to punish the Israeli government. And thanks to Aziz's lessons, I found the key for freedom. And the key is forgiveness. So it's May 2026. There is no hate in me. There is only radical forgiveness and a lot of sadness. I'm very, very sad for all the life that were lost since October 7th, for the life that are still being lost, not only in Gaza and Palestine and Israel, but in Lebanon and Iran. And this is just motivate me to act and work now and resource everything that I have in order to achieve a lasting peace.
Aziz, can you tell me about your brother and your loss?
I grew up in East Jerusalem, suburb of East Jerusalem called Bethany. It's famous in the Bible for Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead in Bethany. And I grew up during the first Intifada, the first Palestinian uprising, where you felt the military occupation very quickly and very easily, where I went to my mother, for example, and told her I don't want to go to school anymore because we were fired at tear gas. And she had to give me an onion every morning. So I would be willing to go to school because an onion could help you not suffocate from tear gas. And this became my normal life, is being shot at, going to school, back from school, tear gas. This was a norm growing up in the first Intifada. And then my whole life changed completely when I was 9 years old. A group of soldiers came to our home early morning. It was Ramadan. We just had our meal pre-fasting. And they came into my room. I shared with my 4 brothers, and they took my older brother, Taysir. He's the one just older than me. We have 9 years difference. I was the oops child in the family. And Taysir is also important to say. He was, because I was the youngest, he's the person who was kind of in charge of my life. You know, when you have so many brothers eventually and you much younger, your parents spend less time with you and your brothers do and raise you. And Taysir was the one who raised me. He's the one who took me to school on my first day. When I got bullied by other kids, he's the one who stood up for me. When I had problems in school, he's the one who came and checked on me in school. And in that day, he was arrested from home. We didn't know what happened, why he was arrested. It was suspicion of throwing rocks at soldiers, and he refused to confess to the charges. So he was beaten up, tortured, until he eventually confessed to whatever they told him he should to. And by the time he was released, he was already very ill, took him to a hospital, and he died soon after the surgery. He was 19 and I was 10 years old. And unlike Maoz, I give Maoz so much credit for being able to overcome that desire of revenge so quickly, because for me, that seemed impossible. If you kill my brother, I'm going to come and punch you back. If you hurt me, I'm going to come and hurt you, especially when you're 10 years old. You know, you don't analyze things and go, okay, I need to think about this logically. Let me take a few steps backward and think about it. I felt very angry. I wanted revenge. And for the next 8 years, that's the thing that consumed me the most. That's what I cared about the most. And my change happened 8 years later when I realized I needed to study Hebrew. I've gone through high school where it was mandatory to learn Hebrew. I refused to learn it, finished high school and realized, oops, if I don't learn Hebrew, I can't go to college, I can't work. The best job I'm going to get was washing dishes. And I really didn't like washing dishes, which I still do, because if you're in love with somebody and you don't wash dishes, it's a problem. But it was, then I went to study Hebrew in an ulpan, which is where Jewish immigrants learn Hebrew. And it was my first interaction with a Jewish Israeli person who saw me as a human being, treated me as a human being, not a threat, not somebody who's lower than them, not the settlers who raided my village on regular basis, but rather as equal. And that was my teacher and then the other students in the classroom. And it was through first simplest things of welcoming me in few words in Arabic, giving me this biggest smile, but then recognizing my identity. The teacher bringing Palestinian stories into the classroom, bringing Palestinian music and asking me to translate them to Hebrew with her. And so we would play them in the class and then the other students will hear them. So she recognized my story. And that's what set me on this journey, this road that has brought me, I think, to meet Maoz. Her empathy towards me and her reaching out towards me is, I believe, what set me up to eventually reach out to Maoz.
So when did you get to the point of forgiveness?
So this journey started when I was 18. I decided I wanted to forgive soon after, because being angry in a way of holding that bitterness, it just eats you from the inside. It destroys you. Maoz always, you say that it keeps digging this hole that's until eventually it's big enough to be your own grave. And so I realize that's important. But then that decision sometimes takes a while to really manifest itself. And it happened when I got a therapist after many years of rejecting that idea. And it took maybe more than 10 years later. And the therapist taught me how to do it. And she said, an emotional decision is not enough. You need to train your brain and you need to train your heart to accept that decision. And so every morning, every afternoon, every evening, I would repeat to myself that I choose to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because it's my choice to take agency, to make that decision. And that every time I chose hate, I was being a slave to the person who killed my brother. I was reacting to what they've done instead of making my own decisions. And it's such a redeeming thing to say, you don't control me anymore.
What difference does scale make to this? I mean, I think you say in the book quite early on, that every day in Gaza was like October 7th for the people there.
Yeah.
The scale of killing, the scale of killing on October 7th was vast. The scale of killing every day since October the 7th is also vast. Does that make a difference to individual acts of forgiveness? Do you think it makes it harder?
I think forgiveness, it's a choice that we make as individual. Unlike reconciliation, which is a process that most people, both sides, should be involved and choose to accept and invest within. So I choose forgiveness just to save myself, not to save my people, and not to save other people, just to save myself as an individual, as a human being. I choose forgiveness. But I cannot say that everyone in my family choose forgiveness. I can not even advise to someone to take this decision or not. It's up to them. But we both showed that it's possible.
Do you think there's a difference between reconciliation and forgiveness? What is this?
I think we can go on a reconciliation journey even when people have not reached yet the level of forgiveness. I hope everyone finds it in their hearts to forgive, because it makes, like Maoz said, it changes your life significantly. It's very hard to live without it. But reconciliation itself is a process. Like Northern Ireland, Jerry Adams and David Trimble definitely did not forgive each other. When they went to Washington for the Good Friday Agreement, they refused to shake hands with each other. They definitely have not forgiven each other, but they were willing to do a peace deal, and that peace deal held since then. So you can do a reconciliation and a peace deal without forgiveness. I still I think there's much better chance of any agreement to last when we also bring the forgiveness as part of it.
I mean, I suppose because you both being in the travel business,
yes.
That is what you've explored in the book as a journey. I mean, what have you learned about the differences in your stories and what overlaps and what is shared? Because there is, you begin really with a story that is appropriated by the Jews from the Arabs.
Yes.
And that is the story of that land over and over, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think we learned that we have much more in common that we expected or thought before starting on our own shared journey, even though both of us were highly invested in tourism and shared life initiatives and bridging for many, many years. So there are many parallel and many stories and many common stories. And there are many things that we agreed to disagree. So it's okay for Aziz to have his own narrative and for the Palestinian their narrative, and it's okay for me and for Israelis to have our own narrative regarding the past, regarding the present, but we must invest in order to find a common ground and create a shared future, a shared narrative that our life and reality will be based upon. So we share a lot from the past and the history as a foundation, and we know that in order to make this foundation stable, we must recognize the other. We must acknowledge that there is another story, there is another narrative, there is another people that is sharing the land with us, and call it my homeland. And only when we are courageous and brave enough to look to each other in the eyes and feeling the pain, listening, hearing the trauma, the suffering, the challenges, dreams and aspiration, that's the only way we can start building from those very stable and strong foundation, we can start building our shared home.
Do you have to have shared terminology, though, and names? Does it matter whether it's the West Bank or whether it's Judea and Samaria? Do you have to have agreed terms?
Yeah, I think largely no, but sometimes yes. So largely no in the sense, if we know where we're going, that's what matters the most. That where it is important to have some shared agreement is if you come to me and say, this is Judea and Samaria and only Jews should live here, and we disagree on that, then we have nothing to do together because our values are not aligned. If you tell me you don't believe in equality and you don't believe in dignity and you don't believe in recognition, you don't believe our lives are equal, then what are we partnering on? And this is something many Palestinians bring to this conversation, is saying, I don't want to come to a peace meeting to just have a conversation about peace when my life is miserable, when my family getting killed. That's not fair, and I agree. If the goal is peace, is only dialogue, then I'm not interested because that's not peace. That's surrender. That's domination. And there are many who advocate for that. I would say even in international politics and presidents and prime ministers and members of parliaments all over the world, there are some who, when they talk about peace, this is really what they mean. There are many Israelis who also think in this way. I look to work with people who don't want to accept the status quo. And I don't care then if they might not agree with every terminology I say, if they call it the separation barrier instead of calling it the apartheid wall, if they're calling it war crime instead of, or if they call it war instead of war crimes. We can argue about that at some point. But what I do care about is what are the values you want today and tomorrow to look like? And do you see us as equal or not? And in the Futures Peace, we talk a lot about that. We talk about what peace should look like. What are the values you build peace on? If we don't have those, then what are we building our agreements on? What's the future we going to? You got to have that baseline to start from.
Yeah, and so when we are coming to share our stories or how we defined an area or historical event, so for the Palestinians, it will always be the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe that happened in the same day we Israelis are celebrating our Independence Day. So Palestinians will always call it Nakba, Israelis will always call it Independence Day. So we agree to disagree, but we know each other's narratives. But when we are talking about ourselves and sharing stories about our families and our loss, that's when we must be aligned. So this also we share that when we prepared our TED Talk in Vancouver in April 2024, and now it's ridiculous, or it's so sad. I'm smiling, but it's so sad that this was the conversation we had to do. I told Aziz, I don't know, there is going to be so much pressure on us. We're going to sit here in the stage, so I don't know how I'm going to describe what happened to my parents. I might say that my parents were murdered. I might say they were killed. I might say that I lost them. I don't know exactly what words will come out to me. So please, I just want to know, to let you know how stressful I am, and please follow up. So if I'm saying my parents were lost, you will say you lost your brother. If I will say my parents were murdered, you will use the same terminology for what happened to your brother. So when we are sharing our pain, we are not competing. There is no hierarchy in pain and in suffering, we are the same. And again, like we always say, our tears are the same, our blood is the same, and our loss is the same, and also our future.
But do you think if there is to be peace, Israelis must recognize that at the same time as their independence, there was a Nakba and there was a catastrophe? And in the same way, Palestinians must recognize that at the same time as their catastrophe, there was a sense of safety for Jews in an Independence Day after the Holocaust and after centuries of persecution.
Yes, and this is how reconciliation look like. By sharing those stories and recognizing the other story, and just know that it's there. Know that this is what you believe. And again, I think it's wrong. Okay, I think it didn't. Someone can say, I don't think it was a catastrophe, and someone say, but I do know that Aziz narrative is that yes, it was a catastrophe. I'm not going to argue with him. No, it wasn't a catastrophe. You are fortunate that we came. No, I'm not. Even though some Israelis would still say that, but I must recognize and acknowledge Aziz's narrative.
Who listens to you when you are in Israel, Palestine?
I was going to say now you are, which is good, but no.
I suppose what I'm getting at is there a risk that you are lauded on European and American platforms and ignored back home?
First, it is important to get that platform in Europe and the US because not many peacemakers have a platform in Europe and the US. I would argue we need significantly more exposure for Israeli and Palestinian peacemakers in the US and in Europe and in the UK and all over the world. Too many pundits who have no knowledge in peacemaking talk about us all the time. And too often peacemakers are not part of the conversation, just like in peace negotiations. Too often peacemakers are not part of the conversation, even though we know from previous agreements, like in Liberia and like in Northern Ireland, these agreements succeeded primarily because peacemakers were in the negotiation room. Yet we sometimes ignore what we could learn from other places. As for Israel and Palestine, there's lots of despair. There's significant amount of despair. And what the message we bring is saying, we know the pain. In the Futures piece, we talk about the pain. We talk about how horrible things are. We talk about the structural imbalance, the asymmetry, but we also talk about hope. And we talk about how do we create hope together. And there are Palestinians and Israelis who absolutely listen to us. We just came from a gathering a couple of weeks ago where 7,000 Israelis and Palestinians met together in Tel Aviv. The year before was in Jerusalem. And we had an incredible meeting and we talked about how we're going to make this happen. I don't know if we are the majority or not. Depending on which poll you check, the numbers change. But it doesn't matter if we are the majority or not. It's about how many of us are active to change the reality. And what we keep saying to our colleagues and to our friends and to those who are willing to listen to us, it takes a small group of people to act on a daily basis to create a change. It doesn't have to be the majority. Settlers are not the majority in Israel, and yet they control the Israeli policy completely. Hamas is not the majority in Palestine. They never got the majority of votes, even back in 2006, despite the misleading news about it. And yet they control they control Gaza. So you don't have to be the majority. You need to be a minority that's willing to work hard every day and not give up and not have a despair. And with that, we do have a small group of people working. We need to grow that number and to remind those who are in despair that the moment you are silent, the moment you're not doing something to change the reality, you are giving your voice to the extremists. They are speaking in your name and you're allowing it.
Are you as angry with Palestinian leadership, whether it's the PA or Hamas, as Maoz is with Netanyahu?
Yes,
as Maoz
was.
So I'm still angry.
Okay, well, let's get to why you're not anymore.
No, I'm still angry at the leadership. I don't hate them, but I'm still angry. I think anger is a good thing. I don't think we should let our anger go away because how can you read the news today and not be angry? Every time somebody dies, I am angry. I am upset, but I use anger like a nuclear power. I think anger is like a nuclear power. You can use it to create a bomb, or you can use it to create electricity. And so I am definitely angry with the Palestinian Authority, and I talk about in the future is peace. I'm very angry at the corruption. I'm very angry at the lack of political imagination, the acceptance of the status quo, the inability to really represent us. I have a lot of issues. I mean, the average age in leadership is over 70 years old. People like me, I'm not that young anymore, have no chance to be in Palestinian politics. And this is unacceptable. And I am angry at Hamas, and this is before October 7th, because their way of how to get to freedom has cost us so much and has not delivered the freedom. The idea that if we kill enough Israeli Jews, we will get freedom, where that has led us to the destruction of Gaza right now. So I do hold our leaders responsible. And I think we both have to be willing to not get into this tribal mindset. Oh, if I'm Palestinian, I can't hold my leaders responsible because we are in such a terrible time. And if you're Israeli, you can't hold Israelis leaders responsible because, oh, I need to stick with my people. This is how we ended up where we are, is this mindset that I need to stick with my leaders regardless of how terrible they are.
Why did you put your hatred in the past tense?
Because now I hate no one. And I decided not to focus on those who I do still think are accountable for the death of my parents and the death of so many sins. I'm focusing only building a coalition, in building a network, in building a movement and a momentum to create a lasting peace. And I think those politicians are thriving over hate, over polarization, and they are making much more noise than we are. And what bleeds leads, not only in the media, but also where we focus. And instead of focusing them, I focus in Aziz. I focus in so many Palestinian Israelis that choose to work together, that are working together to create a change, to model reconciliation, to model a shared future.
So what is the mechanism? And do you think it requires Netanyahu's participation, or will it be a new generation?
So first, I want to thank you for asking. I want maybe to frame it a little bit better. Not better, different. Before October 7th, I was doing public speaking for entrepreneurs, mostly in tourism, but also in the business sector. And I used to say that there are only 5 steps we can take in order to make our dream into a reality, in order to change the world. We are here to change the world. This is our mission. So first, we must dream. Because it's also written in the Bible, when there is no vision, people perish. And this is where we are now. After having a dream, we must agree on the values we'll base our dream upon. And that's also, we achieve that within the peace movement: equality and dignity, shared acknowledgement and recognition, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. Now we must build a coalition that believe in those values. And this is a lot of our work in our Charity Interact International, but also in the peace movement, bring more and more stakeholders together. So to build a very powerful coalition. Then we must have a roadmap, because without a roadmap, you're getting lost. You will never reach your destination. And then we need to implement our roadmap. And our roadmap is also pretty simple. Only 5 steps, 5 chapters. First is the dream. And I'll keep going back again and again to the dream, because we were so fortunate in the last 2.5 years to meet faith leaders from Pope Leo, and then Pope Francis, and then Pope Leo, neuroscience, Nobel Prize laureate, physicians, educator. And we keep hearing from them, many of them, that the only way to change the reality is in the field of dreams. If you have no dream, you're never going to make it. So that's also, again, to encourage others to dream with us. And we came from a meeting earlier today with 2 Gazan sisters, amazing, young, professional, and charismatic Gazan. And my question for them was, what is your dream? What is your dream? And they have a beautiful dream. So always focus on the dream. And then the second chapter is to amplify the dream. This is why we wrote The Future is Peace. This is why we're here with you. we must amplify our dream, because when we are silenced, like Aziz said, others speak in our name. We must build legitimacy to peace. And many times, and thank you for not asking it, many times people ask us, how naive can you be? And when we keep saying naive are those who believe that bombs will bring quiet, that war will defend and war will bring security, because they failed all throughout history. So we are the voice of reason. We are the pragmatic. So we must legitimize peace. Then we need to call for a policy change. Now what is invested in our region, only tool of destruction. If it's from the UK, if it's from Europe, or definitely the US. So we must change those policies. And this is exactly where we are going from one capital to the other and calling for a policy change. And the fifth, and now I'm getting to your question, is to create a political will. We need to create a political will. And what I learned from Aziz is that many times those who signed the peace treaties, the day before they were committing war crime. So for me, I don't care who will sign the peace treaty. I don't care. But what I do care is that it will be now and not tomorrow.
But getting to the political will is an enormous mountain right now. I mean, there is political consensus in Israel when it comes to the Palestinians. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is, the policy is not going to change substantially. Yeah. And as you say, the political process in the Palestinian-controlled areas is also locked. You know, we've just seen the Fatah council elections and the kids of these old men being elected onto the council.
And they old themselves. They're not the kids anymore.
You know, perpetuating the same old thing. So, I mean, how do you get anywhere near the political will?
Yeah. So you get through the political will through that roadmap Maoz has just talked about. You do have to give people an alternative vision to the current reality. We do also need people from outside to be supportive, not just through the policy change that we talked about, but also through incentivizing peacemakers and peacemaking, helping us become more legitimate, and at the same time, sanctioning those who are spreading violence, incitement to hate. You know, the fact that some countries have just come around to sanction Ben-Gvir recently because of what he did with the flotilla activist is a joke. He's a guy who's been genocidal in his language since day one when he took office. He's been a guy who has done the same thing on camera to Palestinian prisoners for a long time. So we need the West as well to come with us and help us say, if this is what you do, we will not give you support. That's sadly, it's not only Israelis and Palestinians. We need the international community to help us do that. And that's, as Maoz said, why we're doing the work we are doing. And that will strengthen us. So we create political will with the partnership, with building a coalition, coming together and saying, Israelis and Palestinians alone will never solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's not going to happen. We need everyone with us. But finally, I would say there's research that shows 3.5% alone of a community can change reality. So what we're doing is activating those who are feeling despair, is going and talking to those who today feel their voices are not being heard. 3.5% is not a lot, but it's a lot of work to get there. And when we can get them out to the streets, for example, we're now getting more Israelis and Palestinians within the peace movement who go to the West Bank to do protective presence. Right now, hundreds of people go. But I can bet you, if that number becomes 20, 30,000, the occupation can fall apart. We need to get 20, 30,000, 50,000 to get there. That's how you do it. That people are not sitting home and saying, oh, I oppose what the settlers are doing. Yeah, but you need to show up. You can't just oppose it from your home. Now, I don't need the 8 million Jews in Israel to come and do it. I need 50,000 to show up. So the numbers are much smaller than we think. And the moment you do that, it will eventually activate the rest of the country. And there are also symbols. The fact that the two of us doing this work is making ripple effects in Israel and Palestine, because we need symbols of people who work together, who show what the future looks like. I learned a lot in Northern Ireland. People were against the peace agreement too. Actually in Colombia, people voted against the peace agreement after it was reached. And what I learned is leaders don't give up when the people are not with them. If you are on a mission to bring peace, You keep going at it, and eventually people will follow. And with the Yes campaign in Northern Ireland, ended up over 70% of people voting for it, even though there was a big fear that people will not. There was a significant opposition to it. Just weeks before, there were talks about, is it going to work or not? Are people going to vote for it or not? When you bring a vision to people that is something they can believe in, things switch very quickly. Even polls switch very quickly.
Thank you both for joining us. You can watch these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Until next time, bye-bye.